Greetings, everyone. Welcome to our exclusive Global Leading Voices webinar campaign. We are delighted to have you join us here today. Please be informed that if you have any questions during the presentation, you may type them into the question box in your control panel. The presenter will answer your questions at the end of the presentation accordingly. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to our presenter, who will begin shortly.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to the webinar where we'd be discussing cybersecurity trends, what to expect in 2023. So in terms of the agenda, we'll briefly go over some introductions, hit the main topic, and then hit Q&A. We'll leave about 10 minutes for Q&A, so please feel free to enter any questions you might have into the chat function, and the organizers would relay that over to us. All right, so in terms of introductions, I'm Madhu Maganti. I'm a partner at Baker Tilly. We're an international CPA advisory firm. I've spent over 20 years in cybersecurity, risk and compliance, started my career at Hewlett-Packard, helped set up their IT Sarbanes-Oxley team, worked on a lot of regulatory compliance needs out there, worked in a lot of global management consulting firms as well. And my goal is to help companies in terms of proactively approaching their cybersecurity risk. And as you can imagine, that's my dog, Bruce. Over to you, Colleen.
Good morning, good day, everyone. My name is Colleen Lennox. I am the owner of Cyber Job Central, which is a job board for cybersecurity professionals. I've been a recruiter in the technology space for many, many years, and for the past 6 years have been only doing cybersecurity, which has been great. It's a great industry. It's busy. It's a great time to look for a job in this space or to enter into this space. And hopefully we'll be able to provide you all with some good insight into what we see in 2023. And they're my cats scratching at the door.
Thank you, Colleen. So just as we move ahead, a quick note in terms of how we're planning to approach this. So the trends that we've identified, we're going to keep them at a high level, understanding very well that the audience could be folks who are starting off in cybersecurity, looking to get into cybersecurity, and the seasoned professionals. So if there are any questions, that we need to take offline, our contact details are available at the end of this slide, and these slides would be shared with you. So we'd love to hear back from you, but just know that the general note of this webinar would be to keep it at a level where everybody could understand. All right, so starting off, people continue to remain a risk. So nothing has changed. When we do risk assessments for our clients, we typically look at the people, process, and technology aspects of any organization, with the risk being in that order. So people continue to be the greatest risk, with any organization. Phishing attacks, again, continue to be the main causes for data breaches. So that's absolutely based out of employees clicking on malicious emails and allowing bad actors to enter the network. Now, access controls have been strengthened in most companies, but the awareness piece needs to continue to be strengthened, because as the threat landscape keeps seeing a change in how the bad actors are able to get in. So in terms of fortifying your fortress, which is your organization and all of the data, what we typically recommend is to have your employees be the guardians for your organization. And how do you do that? You do that by equipping them with all the right information, all the right training, that then when they see something, they say something. And that is sometimes the best sense of support that you can get as an organization and as a information security personnel, because most times you cannot be the only ones who are looking at keeping your businesses with the highest security, protecting all of the data and so on. So when you have your employees relay information over to you, you've got that additional support that all of you within the cybersecurity business would understand that, you really, when you're trying to put in some cybersecurity program without the support of the employees, without exec buy-in, you're not able to make the right inroads. And again, there are lots of tools that are available for awareness training, and there are a lot of security vendors that you can go to. So feel free to choose something that makes that makes the best sense from a financial standpoint, but also has the right coverage for your industry. So your employees are given the best chance to learn something and to have their eyes up open for any security threats. Colleen, do you have anything to add?
Well, I think also, obviously most attacks happen through email, clicking links. So just making people aware not to click links or to double check the email address of emails coming in, because these people are really good at faking, being the bad guy. So, and also I think another thing in this is third party risk around making sure you're aware of what the other vendors you have on your network, the risk they play.
Yeah. Absolutely, and you brought up a good point there. So one of the other items that just happened last night. So we rescued 2 dogs last night, put them on a app called Paw Boost, and my phone number went out there for anybody to contact me. And what I noticed was immediately I got a text from somebody saying, "Hey, do you have the dogs?" And they asked me for a code which came from Google Voice. And for the uninitiated, they would probably just go ahead and provide that code. But one Google search told me that this is basically a scam where they're trying to get into your Gmail and change your password and gain control over your Gmail. So there are a lot of these different types of attacks, and sometimes it's best to take some time, not react immediately, and try to follow orders, be it a BEC, a business email compromise, or text messages that purportedly comes from one of your execs. So the awareness should be there to make sure that folks are taking their time figuring out whether they are at risk and then taking action accordingly, or passing that information over to the information security team and then allowing for a more informed decision. All right, next one. So increased compliance requirements. So who doesn't love compliance, right? So at the end of the day, with the US, and I'm not only going to be talking about US specific, given that we've got an audience that is across the world, but just from a referral standpoint, I mean, the US has come up with a lot of different state privacy laws. And what we're going to see is there are going to be more laws that are going to be passed to ensure that not only privacy but security features are strengthened within organizations. We've seen multiple countries come up with compliance requirements. So we're only going to see more of these. And what that means is that organizations either would need to hire dedicated GRC staff and ensure that they're meeting the compliance requirements. And also with all these multiple privacy regulations, you would want to get a matrix, a control or compliance matrix that ensures that you are hitting multiple privacy compliances through the different controls that you've got. Whereas most people tend to think of the compliances as independent. What we traditionally do is to ensure that we've got a mapping of the different compliance needs and see that if one control can meet requirements across the different regulations, that's probably the best way to go, which means, again, you need to have those dedicated GRC staff that can help you in this endeavor, as opposed to doing it piecemeal across multiple regulatory requirements. And everybody on this call is probably aware of GDPR that set everything in motion. You've got the PIPEDA in in Canada. You've got multiple other laws in Mexico, India, Brazil, China, you name it. All of these countries are coming up with that. So be prepared for increased compliance requirements. And in terms of the hiring piece, I think this is a good segue for Colleen to kind of give you a lay of the land in terms of the critical shortage that we are finding within the cybersecurity industry. So Colleen, do you have some thoughts on that?
Well, I do know that the privacy space is so understaffed. There's just not enough people in the world to do what is needed to be done. So it's a great space to enter into. A lot of people, some have their law degree, some do not. So some people think they have to have their law degree to get into this space, but truthfully, I don't think it matters as long as you have some experience around privacy and an interest in it.
Thank you, Colleen. So one of the other things that we've noticed from a consulting standpoint is that because of the shortage, there are a lot more co-sourcing opportunities that have come about where, as a company, we are able to, augment some of the staff into internal audit teams and some of the other teams just to help with some of these high burden issues. And that's something for you all to consider in terms of working with some of the third parties if you're not able to hire dedicated staff within a timeline, just given that most of these regulations have tight deadlines that you would have to meet in order to ensure you don't get hit by any regulatory fines. All right. Next one is vendor consolidation. So we're definitely seeing a lot of M&A within the security space. Folks are basically relying on, refining their current software, not really focusing in on developing new things, bringing everything, into a consolidated manner, acquiring different companies. So what we're seeing there is fewer security vendors. And what that means is one good thing is you're basically going to be tasked with managing less security vendors. But on the other end of the spectrum, you're probably going to see that the budgetary standpoints, the cost might increase because there could be some sort of a monopoly within that area. As you can already tell, the cybersecurity market space is a noisy one. Everybody's jostling for space out there. Everybody's trying to, showcase why they're better than the others, why their tool is the most necessary for organizations. So one thing that we always tell folks is to ensure that they're looking at security vendors based on their third party assessment. So have a questionnaire as much as a CISO, as information security personnel, you are inundated with risk assessment questionnaires from your third parties. Make sure that you're returning the favor in some ways by ensuring that you're bringing on security vendors who take their security seriously and have the right certifications, be it ISO 27001 or SOC 2 reports that are common in the US region, and ensure that they've got cybersecurity insurance, they've got all the relevant things that you think are necessary for you to do business with them. Make sure it's not just a checklist, it is something that you're vetting. And in some cases, a lot of companies do put into their contracts, they put a clause in terms of a right to audit. So at any given point of time, you're able to go in and audit these security vendors to ensure that your data is actually being taken care of and is not out there for anybody to see. One of the things that in the last bullet, so even when outsourcing security functions, you want to make sure that you've got experienced folks in-house. So no amount of external consultants such as myself and the rest of the rest of the team can come in and showcase the risk as much as folks within the organization. So when we typically do risk assessments, we leverage the information we get from not only your experienced cybersecurity staff, but the experienced people within the organization. So they are the ones who actually open their hearts out in some cases and give us the lay of the land, tell us about the risk within the organization, and so on. So have some of these experienced folks in-house, because that will enable you to not only manage your vendors appropriately, but to manage your workflow in terms of all the different tasks that somebody within the organization needs to deal with. Colleen, do you have any inputs in terms of vendor consolidation? Are you seeing anything based on your interactions with either candidates or with the companies that you're recruiting for?
I think it's just such a candidate short market. There's just not enough people out there doing what needs to be done. So I think this will be a problem for years to come. So, but I do think it's important also, you mentioned like having an internal staff. You have to make sure you take good care of your staff because they are constantly being hunted by someone. So you have to make sure you treat your staff well and have good retention. If not, you're going to have major turnover in your security department.
And hence the Pac-Man reference down there, right? It's a dog-eat-dog world out there, and everyone's trying to make sure that because of this shortage, if they're not able to find somebody outside, they're trying to poach from their competitors and so on. So, Colleen, that's a great point. All right, moving on. So, again, I mean, through the years, we've noticed that the prioritization of cyber risk has, worked its way up when, a few years ago, it wasn't even in the top 10 risks that the board really expected to discuss during a board meeting. Now it's creeped its way up and it's probably in the top 3 in these days. But you want to make sure, in 2023 that this is a high priority. I mean, we've been earlier, the cybersecurity market was basically running on fear, uncertainty, and doubt, FUD. But talking about various, let's say various breaches that came into play. But then now, when you open the newspaper, if anyone's reading a physical newspaper or opening any websites, one of the top things you always see are either ransomware attacks or some sort of a data breach. So this is only going to get bigger in 2023. So with all of this economic uncertainty, what we're also seeing is that spending on cybersecurity will increase, but they will be diligent in terms of how they want to expend that money. So we're seeing a lot more folks trying to ensure that from a spending standpoint, they're only focusing in on those critical things that can absolutely reduce their security risk. And the discretionary spend, that typically was done for other areas that had an impact, but not so much. They're kind of working them into the entire security umbrella, trying to ensure that they're focusing solely on prioritizing risk mitigation activities and nothing more. So be it risk assessments, be it pen testing, be it all of those privacy and compliance issues that they need to get into play. So all of those are things that everybody's prioritizing just to ensure that they have a good grasp over their security posture and they're able to relay that information to their leaders as well. And what there could be some contradictions in terms of with the security vendors having their M&A activities in play, and there could be that monopoly that you could see, and that might be a little long drawn, but what you do see is most leaders are seeking budget friendly security investments. So there could be a case where there would be a back and forth between the vendors and the companies in terms of getting the most bang for the buck, in terms of ensuring that not only are the priorities of the company being taken care of, but it's being done on a budget friendly terms as well. And again, 2023 is no different from 2022, no different from 2021. The threat landscape is changing significantly. What that means is that the cyber criminals are trying to do everything in their might to penetrate through the networks, gather as much information as they can, hold people ransom. So that is only going to increase as we move forward. So one of the things that one of the things that from a cyber crime standpoint, it isn't really industry specific, though some industries are being targeted a lot more than others, which we will hit later on in this webinar. But one of the things to note is that they don't rest. So you need to constantly be prepared in terms of ensuring that if you're doing certain tasks, you want to ensure that those tasks are being done timely. For example, one of the companies that I've been helping out from a strategic standpoint is a healthcare company where they were doing monthly vulnerability scans, and we had to change that to weekly just to ensure that we've got a better understanding as to our vulnerabilities. And because the healthcare sector is being targeted a whole lot, you need to make certain adjustments within the security plan to ensure that you're meeting or trying to stay ahead of the threat landscape, because it's changing very frequently. Colleen, I had a question for you out here. So do you have any interactions with board members, and have you heard anything from them about the cyber risk standpoint and where they see cyber risk as one of their priorities?
I mean, I think everyone, talks a good game that they want to increase their cyber awareness and cyber risk programs. I think until there's a penalty put against it, like privacy laws, I think some people will still be lackadaisical because it does cost money and you don't see a return on investment, but it could put you out of business if you don't.
Absolutely. And we are seeing, from a board perspective, there is a lot more nuanced conversations. In the board meetings that I've been in the past few years, what typically happened was it was coming from the bottom to the top, right? So it was coming from the management to the board, and there weren't necessarily any metrics or any other things that were finalized or developed for the board to see. But in the last few years, what I'm seeing is there has been some sort of a role reversal, not so much that the management is not paying attention to cyber, but in terms of the board proactively asking for updates on cyber and wanting to look at some of the metrics so they can support management in terms of making certain decisions in addressing cyber risk. So that's a welcome change. And I think one of the things that I always tell my clients is to have that approach where you're proactive and working with the board, develop metrics that ensures that not only you've got the support as an organization, but it also from a CISO standpoint, you're showcasing all the different things that you're running up against. So you get adequate support, be it increase in the cybersecurity budget or staffing. All of that plays an important role in keeping the security of a company together. So some of the things that you would want to pay attention to in 2023 and continuing into the future as well. All right, we've touched upon this significantly already, and you'll see it's a common thread, right? CISOs on the call will tell you that, with the economic uncertainty, excuse me, there's definitely budget cuts, but like I said, the cyber criminals are not, taking a break either. So the risks continue to increase. So one of the things that, we need to take into consideration is, though the cybersecurity spending is projected to increase, like I said earlier, leaders may not be comfortable spending all that amount required. They would need to keep a rainy day fund to handle multiple other things. But you want to make sure that from a staffing perspective, which Colleen can definitely talk about. You've got your employee training, you've got advanced security tools, process improvements. These are multiple things that you need to do to ensure that you mitigate the risk, but it needs to be done within a budget-friendly environment. So work with those vendors that you're comfortable working with. There could be chances where you can, have a payment plan with them to ensure that you're still, hitting your budgetary goals, but then you're also taking the lead in terms of ensuring the organization is, looking at their security posture in the right sense. What I think, Colleen, one of the thoughts that I just had right now was, given that folks don't necessarily want to spend a whole lot, but there is a shortage, which is a conundrum in itself. How would you address this situation, and also maybe share some words of advice to those folks within the call who are probably looking for a new move?
Well, I think that it is a scary time to make a move because, people don't know, people believe it's like first, last in, first out, which I don't necessarily believe to be true. I think, hard workers will always stand out and maintain their job. But also, I do think that, we hear about no one's hiring, no one's hiring. I don't see it yet on the cyber side. And because I do think a lot of these, positions are just have been vacant for so long. But let me ask you this, Madhu, if you were working with a smaller company that really doesn't have a huge budget to spend on anything extra, is there like three things you would say to spend your money on as opposed to others? Now is obviously not the best time to implement a new tool, but what would you suggest they spend their money on?
So typically what I try to do is, like I stated earlier, with the market being so noisy, the cybersecurity market, you've got a lot of tools that are out there that can do a lot of work. But essentially, I'll answer this, but not stick to your three, topics that you wanted me to touch upon. I'll just touch upon a few and might hit those three. We'll see. But I typically start off with a cybersecurity risk assessment. So one of the things that a lot of organizations do is not necessarily know where their risk lies. Especially with the smaller companies, and I'll touch upon the larger ones as well. Not wanting to generalize, because the larger ones typically, the CISOs, they've got a independent information security function where the CISOs and the staff do conduct, risk assessment. But essentially, starting with a risk assessment where either as the third party we come in with a fresh set of eyes, which is always a good thing, just given the different industries and different companies that we meet on a regular basis and do these similar activities. It is good to start off with a risk assessment, because you're not just thinking about it from a technology perspective. One thing that I've seen with the smaller companies is they are so focused on technology, they forget the people and process aspect. So from a risk perspective, we either use the NIST, standards, National Institute of Standards and Technologies, cybersecurity framework as a guideline. It's got 108 subcategories, 5 large categories. So we hit all of those different aspects. And what that does is to give a good understanding of the organization from end to end. We're covering not only the people aspect of things, given that it's the highest risk, we're getting down into the process piece as well. So we're not just talking to IT or security and leadership. We're talking to finance, we're talking to sales, HR, tax, you name it. We're trying to ensure that we get a good understanding of where the organization stands, what the different risk is within the processes. And then once we get all of that combined, we also do a vulnerability scanning, penetration testing to then combine it with what we've learned to get a good understanding as to where things lie for that organization. Then we do a roadmap in terms of what are the biggest risk factors that can be mitigated quickly. So typical things, 20% of our recommendations would, the top 20 rather, would hit pretty much 80% of the risk. So we roadmap things, and I think doing it in that fashion would allow you to take more of an informed decision, as opposed to just finding one area that you think is a risk, but not understanding what are the different factors that cause that risk to come into play. It could be the people, it could be just a broken process. So having a good understanding, and then for those who do not typically employ third-party consultants, be it due to spending reasons or otherwise, have self-assessments on a periodic basis. Do certain things that would allow you to gain a better understanding of things. And from an incident response planning standpoint, disaster recovery, and business continuity standpoint, make sure you've got these policies, you've got these plans, and you're testing them periodically. That is something that I'm seeing a lot of companies still fail to do. It's a quick win. It allows leadership, it allows the rest of the folks who are within the incident response team or in the business continuity disaster recovery teams to know how to perform their activities when a real life exercise comes into play. Till you're doing tabletop exercises, there is less stress, but in a real life, incident, everybody's head is on fire. Everyone's trying to get into other people's lanes. So practice, practice, practice. So when you're hit with something, you're actually going to benefit out of ensuring that, you're ahead of the curve and everybody's in their lane. You're able to get back to your feet sooner with minimal spend. And lastly, from a technology perspective, a lot of companies buy a lot of technology, but they're not utilizing it to the fullest. So make sure that you're looking at your technology, seeing what the different features are within that tools kit. Ensure that you're able to leverage that, because we see a lot of overlap between technology tools, and a lot of companies tend to have a small piece with one of the items, a smaller piece with another vendor, and the spend becomes significant, but one vendor could potentially take care of all of these different activities. So make sure you're reviewing your technology vendors and ensuring, even from a budgetary standpoint, that you're able to leverage some of your conversations with them into negotiating and getting a better rate at things. Colleen, did that kind of answer your question? Anything that you think I should have brought up?
No, perfect.
Okay, thank you. All right, so cyber insurance, a fun topic. We've seen things change so much from a cyber insurance standpoint. We've had, I recall in the about 10, close to 10 years ago, I'd done a study and we noticed that everybody was jumping into the cyber insurance business, but they didn't have any trends, analysis, history, none of that, but they were charging these low premiums, giving big coverages till a lot of the underwriters went broke. So what happened then was that they started doing a lot more trend analysis. They were asking for more detailed questionnaires. For those who've been in the business for a while, you would have noticed, earlier on, the questionnaires for cyber insurance were very limited. They were just an add-on to your existing policies. And most times it was answered by folks who probably didn't even know anything about the cyber landscape within the organization, and they still got insurance coverage. And now, with everything that's going on, insurance carriers are, facing record losses. So what that means is they're charging a premium, but then they're paying so much that they're not making any money. And what that means is, you would have noticed, for anybody who went through a renewal, your cybersecurity insurance has probably gone through the roof for all the coverage that you need to be having. And we're seeing that, with all of these risks that they're trying to take on, because insurance is nothing but transferring of the risk, where you're hoping for the best but preparing for the worst. So that's typically the tagline of the insurance companies as well as cybersecurity personnel. So, in that way, it's relatable, but know that they would want to see more of your risk assessments to then provide you what is a good driver discount. So work with your insurance providers to see what you can do to provide them such that you can negotiate your rates more favorably. We're seeing a lot of cases where insurance providers are reaching out to, partnering with third-party consultants to get a better understanding of the risk posture of a particular company, and then in some cases not even going forward with issuing any insurance because they feel like it could be a loss maker. So work through your cybersecurity insurance brokers or carriers. Ensure that if you've got certain certifications from an ISO standpoint, or if you've got your SOC 2 reports, SOC 1 reports, make sure that you're leveraging that to get more bang for your buck again from a insurance standpoint. And know that at the end of the day, insurance is not going to cover everything that you've got within your umbrella. There could be a limit out there after which you would have to self-insure, and in most cases folks are looking at self-insurance in that regard as well. So be prepared, have somebody knowledgeable read through your cyber insurance policies to look for those clauses. I always joke with some of my clients saying that, look, there are days when if somebody's hit by a breach, the insurance folks could say, well, you got up from the wrong side of the bed, so today you're not going to get covered. You want to make sure that you're covered no matter what, and you know exactly to what limit you're covered, when you need to pull in insurance. Make sure that from a cyber insurance standpoint, if they've got certain forensics vendors that they've tied up with, you've got all the capabilities there to kind of lean upon should you have a breach. So make sure from an overarching perspective, you're dealing with the right coverage, getting it at a right price, and utilizing any opportunities to use their approved vendors from a forensic standpoint and otherwise. And obviously, given the area that we're working in, there would be involvement with law enforcement. So one of the things that I always tell my clients is make sure you have a good relationship with your law enforcement folks. Just in case something does go sideways, you're able to reach out to them, and you're not initiating a relationship then. You've already had one, so you can reach out to them and start moving the process much sooner. Colleen, any thoughts on the cyber insurance space? Are you seeing any hiring needs from cyber insurance carriers where they're trying to get people who've already worked in the cyber security business just to spruce up and ensure that from a risk perspective they're covering things? Just curious.
Oh, I do. Actually, I just went to a webinar on cyber insurance. And the one thing that I think a lot of companies for many years use cyber insurance as their safety net, where they were aware of certain vulnerabilities that they left, they put a blind eye to, because if anything did happen, insurance would cover it. But I don't think that's the case anymore. But something interesting that they said in this webinar was the three types of industries which are almost uninsurable in some cases. You would think it would be, to me, I thought it'd be financial services because they seem to be the ones that are most at risk, but it's really manufacturing, healthcare, and education, which I thought was
So
interesting.
that I mean, if I think my slide was correct, there you go.
Look at that, I didn't even know.
Yeah, and this wasn't planned. But from an industry specific attacks, I mean, no industry is safe. I mean, we're not saying that if you're outside of the healthcare industry or manufacturing or financial or educational, you're safe. No, everyone's going after everybody. It's one of those things. You have to keep your eyes and ears open for your for the threat landscape that seeps into each one of these areas. Healthcare providers, again, I mean, we've seen that in the dark web that each record from a healthcare perspective, you get the most money on the dark web. So obviously the criminals would go after that. From emerging, I mean, you've got so many emerging technologies from a medical field standpoint. So you've got medical devices that come into play. They need to be tested on a frequent basis. There are vulnerabilities out there that need to be patched. So the healthcare providers, again, they are working to take care of the health of everybody within the country, within our planet. People do go after them. What we've seen is, from a healthcare perspective, we've seen ransomware shutdown scheduling tools. It has ensured that folks are not able to, register patients who are coming in for treatment. So that creates a lot of issues. They're changing up numbers within the test results. Uh, Things that are, that morally kind of baffle me and would baffle most of you. They're doing certain things that don't even make sense. So we need to make sure that from a healthcare standpoint, we are protecting the interest, taking all the help that we can use. There is the HIPAA high-tech law within the US that covers the healthcare industry, be it the covered entities or the business associates. There's a lot of requirements there that people need to fulfill, but there are still opportunities to just walk in and ensure that you're able to gain access to healthcare records. So from a healthcare perspective, be on the vigil. You've got other areas like Colleen said, manufacturing, where we've seen cases where there was a Coca-Cola plant where they would constantly keep ferrying multiple, trucks filled with Coca-Cola products. But ransomware took that entire thing down, and the owners were tasked with continuing to pay for the trucks, continuing to pay the employees till the systems came back up. And it's easy for somebody to get in and cause that nuisance value. But what this nuisance does is to shut shop for a lot of companies. So you need to be very aware of where somebody could come in and interject things. And again, all of you are familiar. I mean, the mode of attack could be external, it could also be internal. So make sure that from an information security standpoint, that you're focusing in on all of your different threats and taking action accordingly with good access controls and so on. Financial information, again, obvious areas where people want to go, anything where they can create identity theft issues, everybody's going for it. So definitely something to be aware of. Use regulation to your advantage. So what I tell a lot of my clients who are maybe reeling under a lot of risk but not getting the support of their management is to use regulation to their advantage, because there are cases where regulation requirements would allow you to meet certain security requirements that you had in play, you had in mind. And I think that's a good way to tackle that and get the buy-in. But from all of these, industries, be it the highest priority target to the lowest one, make sure you're constantly in touch with your management and alerting them to the risk, so you're getting the support that you need. Colleen, anything else you want to add on this particular topic?
Well, I just think, just in healthcare in general, I think if you even just read about what can happen if there is a breach in a hospital or healthcare organization, it's very, very scary. But also just on a job field, I feel I wanted to say about manufacturing that IoT is, in the past year, like jobs in that space are crazy. So
Yeah.
it's a good area to look into if you're interested.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's a need across the board, and the opportunity to get into cybersecurity and having the job security is something else, because this is something that we're not seeing going away anytime soon. And on that point, I mean, there are so many different modes where we've seen a lot of people pivot in their career towards cybersecurity. They could have some relevant experience in the past, but I'm seeing a lot of people who have actually changed their career path to get into security. And
Yeah,
those are conversations that I have with a lot of mentees where those that want to get in because they're excited with this field. And I think as cybersecurity professionals, we need to welcome them with open arms, because we could use all the help we could get. And especially those who are enthused and who are excited about serving the community. That's something that I'm passionate about, and obviously can talk about that for several hours if I chose to. But if anybody needs help, I mean, Colleen and I are available on that topic specifically, to chat and help make introductions within the cybersecurity community itself.
absolutely. And I think obviously, I think it's very important when you're breaking into cyber. It's just a very hard area to break into because you just don't necessarily have hands-on experience. So you just want to make sure you know what you're doing so that you can have a conversation with people when you do get an opportunity to be in front of someone. And having a mentor is key.
Absolutely. All right. Did it say, are you able to see my screen?
I see it.
Okay. It says, please move to resume sharing. All right. So more software patches. So, I mean, this is something that's, again, we're seeing patches come out on an incredible level, something that we haven't seen in the past because of all of these different zero-day vulnerabilities that folks are coming up against. So IT teams are struggling to keep everything up to date. So make sure that, either your teams are current in terms of the patches, they're up to date in terms of their learning and education in terms of how to apply them. Create a plan that makes it important for them to address this issue in good stead, because if you're not patching things, it's the easiest way for these vulnerabilities to be exploited and for bad actors to come in. uh, a topic we've already touched upon, from a hiring standpoint, right? So the Ponemon Institute found that 64% of the organizations are looking to hire more IT staff for patch management, which tells you how much this has changed in the last few years, because they need to stay current with their patches. And I can tell you a lot of organizations are struggling to do that. So make sure that you're hiring the right people from an IT perspective, but also retaining experienced IT staff. Uh, like Colleen said, incentivize them, make sure that you're doing the right things to keep them on board, because losing a staff member who's got institutional knowledge and then bringing somebody on board to train them up to speed and getting the best out of them, there's a vast difference there. So, make sure that you're working towards that. Easier said than done, but reach out to your resources, reach out to your community, find out who can introduce you to whom, to kind of address some of these IT related gaps. And then, like I said, I mean, outdated software, because you've not patched, could lead to vulnerabilities, could then automatically lead to a data breach, because people are basically getting out there and looking for vulnerabilities as we speak. So make sure you're taking care of those things on a timely basis. Zero trust adoption, we've seen that buzzword. Zero trust is something everyone's talking about, but make sure that you are utilizing authentication, identity as part of everything that you do from a zero trust standpoint. Being risk aware, ensuring that there is continuous identity authorization, and then you're practicing the least privilege uh, access controls as well. Ensure that you're monitoring these things on a regular basis. Again, not everybody has gone in to adopt zero trust. It is something that is work in progress in most organizations, but what we're going to see is a lot more people are going to go that route, just given the nature of everything within the industry from a threat landscape standpoint. Government intervention, we're seeing, the US has come up with a lot of, rules, be it from an SEC standpoint for public organizations. There are multiple other countries. I know India came up with one, Canada and so on. Different countries are trying, the governments are talking about cybersecurity being a big risk and that they need to protect their interests. So, because all of these businesses are what is, shoring up the economy of that particular country, and they want to make sure that these businesses survive and are taking the right steps to, ensure that they're preventing these cybersecurity attacks. Now, you cannot always prevent, but be proactive in your approach. So that way, when you're hit by an attack, you're able to get back on your feet sooner. So things like incident response plan, business continuity plan, all of those things are what the government has come up with. They do come up with certain lists that you would want to look at and see if you're meeting those requirements. If not, work towards them, because these are very simple, standard things that all organizations need to deal with. But there are industry specific items that you would still need to consider outside of what the government notices put out. From a US standpoint, they've absolutely spoken about ransomware because it's hitting educational institutions, it's hitting hospitals, cities even. So there is a big requirement for everybody to kind of fall in line in terms of ensuring they're taking care of their cybersecurity posture, having a good program in place. And we've spoken, like I said, I don't want to make this more US centric, but please look at your government's notifications on cybersecurity. I would love to hear from some of you in terms of what you have gathered there, because it only increases my knowledge as well. But I'd love to hear from you after this presentation to see what the governments are talking about and how you've addressed those particular risks. Lastly, from an MFA standpoint, MFA is out there. Cyber insurers need it. Everybody needs it. But there are phishing techniques now that are MFA aware. So they are designed with MFA in mind, which allows folks to still get through. To that point, I spoke about the earlier incident where with Paw Boost, somebody reached out to me, asked for that token that Google had sent up. So these are ways that they'll try to socially engineer and get through things. But you want to make sure that MFA is not the be-all end-all of it all. So you want to make sure that employees are aware, and you want to ensure that you're training each of your employees to understand that the threat landscape is changing, and make sure that you're not doing the same awareness training year after year. Have a provider or a vendor who is giving you new videos or new training, so you can do them more on a quarterly basis, because at best doing it quarterly is how it stays in your employee's mind, and they can act as a guardian, as I spoke earlier, to help you in successfully mitigating cybersecurity risks. Colleen, any thoughts on this particular topic at all?
Well, there's, obviously there's a lot to do, so there's a lot of jobs. No, it's crazy. And I think everyone in the audience gets text all the time for two-factor.
Absolutely. All right, with that, thank you so much for your time. I had to leave some time for questions. I know I ran, we ran a couple minutes over our 15-minute time slot, but open for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Madhu and Colin, for delivering this very informative webinar. Just to remind you that PCB offers training and certification courses, which will show your dedication in managing cybersecurity, and most importantly, you will get recognized worldwide. Now, without further ado, I'll go ahead and answer some of the questions from the attendees. The first question is, how will AI technologies like ChatGPT influence the cybersecurity risk landscape?
Okay, so that's an interesting one because we're seeing ChatGPT and other AIs now. ChatGPT obviously came into more prominence with the Microsoft purchase and just with all the stories that are out there, right? So I think what we are going to be seeing is leveraging artificial intelligence to the fullest extent, but we still need to make informed decisions from a human standpoint to ensure complete coverage. Ensuring that you're able to gather all the information that you need, which earlier we'd have to go in and crawl the internet or crawl your network. You could utilize, AI to gain that information, but I always feel like having that human intervention and taking that human decision is important in ensuring that you're able to protect your interest. Now, it will be interesting to see how things change or evolve from the bad actors trying to take advantage of AI, and that's something I've got my eyes and ears open for as well. But I think there will be some sort of an impact surely on in the short term and pretty significant in the long term, because it's not that the AI is available just for the good guys versus the bad guys, right? It's available to both. So we need to kind of see how we can keep up with it, but know that human intervention is still required to keep your systems and your organization secure.
Okay, thank you, Madhu. One of the attendees wants to know, in your own opinion, what is more important, the compliance or the knowledge of the end user about cybersecurity?
So those, I think, are two different topics per se. So knowledge of cybersecurity from the end users is good to protect the entire interest of the firm, because then they know what not to do. From a compliance standpoint, it is having certain guidelines that you meet to attain compliance, which still would need the requirements of the different employees within the organization. It could be limited to a few, or it could be everybody. For example, if you're protecting healthcare information, because that is a topic we spoke about significantly in the last few slides, all the employees would be required to protect that. Whereas with certain other compliance areas, that could be limited to just the compliance team that is helping collate data and put things into place. So I think they're independent in some ways, but could come together in some ways, but are of equal importance, because at the end of the day, my goal is to protect the company overall from a security risk perspective, but also meet compliance and ensure that employees are aware and are trained significantly to protect their interests as well.
Thank you, Madhu. Okay, another question is, why do you think cyber crime is on the increase despite the continuous cybersecurity awareness?
So from a cyber criminal standpoint, they're looking for new ways to get in. So not only are they, as cyber criminals, aware of the trainings, all the modes of protection that we put into place, they're trying to go one up. So as much information that we have access to, they have access to that and more. So we want to make sure that from a cyber criminal standpoint, we are staying ahead of the curve in terms of educating our employees and ourselves as we move forward. But know that their cyber criminals are constantly testing new tools, new techniques in terms of how they can enter an organization. So I mean, given this environment, a lot of people, they've been remote. We've seen COVID, be a enhancer of cyber criminal activity. it's just because people are sitting at home and they, there are some people who are getting enrolled into criminal groups, and all they're doing is to try to find vulnerabilities within organizations, having the same knowledge that the organization has. So you need to constantly stay on top of things there.
Thank you. Okay, another question is, what do you think of penalizing staff for negligence on InfoSec risk actions?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again?
What do you think of penalizing staff for negligence on InfoSec risk actions?
Okay, so this, I have an interesting take on it. So I've seen companies where, the first time around, if there are some risky actions being taken that could put the company in jeopardy, it calls for training and coaching. But the second time around, they're let go. So it's 2 strikes and you're out policy. And I think a lot of them are looking at that only because they do not want somebody who is such a high risk to the organization that they keep clicking on every email that comes through or provides information to outsiders without, clearly getting any approvals. They want to make sure that their environment is secure. So in some ways, I'm all for it, but also need to understand where the gap is that prompted said individual to do what they did, try to address those gaps as well. So I've seen both ends of the spectrum, but I think, given this day and age, I can see why 2 strikes and you're out makes sense.
Thank you. Okay, and the last question for today is, what items we need to have when we speak about a good cybersecurity governance?
So from a cybersecurity governance, I mean, you obviously have your cybersecurity, your CISO. You've got all of your different folks that either report into that particular CISO and obviously address security risk appropriately. So you want to make sure that you've got adequate policies, you've got your incident response plan, business continuity, disaster recovery, ensure that you've got the right people under each one of these as responsible, accountable, and so on. Ensure that you're leveraging your organization such that you're talking to your CISO whenever required or management, and allow for that constant interaction to address security risks. And that's see something, say something sort of a mentality. If it is addressed and the tone at the top, if that is significant, I think the governance model becomes that much simpler for people to openly share information within the organization. And one thing that I also would recommend is, if you have industry specific groups that you can be a part of, there's a lot of information sharing that happens in these industry specific groups, and it would be good for you to understand what the risks are that other companies within the industry saw, that you can then look to see how you're addressing it and spruce up your efforts there as well.
Thanks a lot. Okay, thank you one more time, Matthew and Colin, for presenting today. The audience, please just be informed that this session is recorded and it will be posted on our website and YouTube channel along with the slides of the presentation. Thanks to you all for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.